What's up guys, Hamsterwheel here with a new video, and this is going to be a little extra because not too long ago my video of Naxxramas reached over 1 million views, and that is amazing. I mean, if you look at the other videos I do, I mean the second most popular video I have is close to 100,000, and then you have this one video that reached 1 million views, which is just crazy. I never thought I would have a video that would actually go viral like that. And since then I had a shitload of comments of people commenting on how great it was. You know, there's a lot of people discussing in the comment section about, no, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, whatever. And there's also been a bunch of people that have said that there are flaws in this video, or their video sucks, it is, you know, information that is not correct. And the video I made is by no means perfect. It has some flaws here and there. And you know, since this is the video that went viral, I'd like to just look back at this video and provide some commentary on what I told, why I told that, why I said that, and how did I get that information. So, as a little extra, let's watch the Naxxramas video again and look at that wonderful 7-figure view count. Just 1 second, let me just do, there we go. Alright, without further ado, let's start the video. The long intro. Hey guys, Hamsterwheel Gaming here, and I'm here to talk about what these so-called veteran WoW players are calling the hardest dungeon ever to be. Okay, pause. So, this is the first mistake I made. I said dungeon. Naxxramas is not a dungeon, it's a raid. So I said that so many times in the video. It was the hardest dungeon. This dungeon was unforgivable. You know, this dungeon made you quit your guild, whatever. And I know it's wrong. I should have said raid. I don't know why I went with dungeon, because I made a script for this video, so I was just being stupid, I guess. So that's mistake number 1. Conceived by Blizzard. Old Naxxramas. Naxxramas has long been considered to be the hardest dungeon, and for a good reason. It wore on the whole guild, and while Blackwing Lair and Anki. Okay, pause right there. In this video, you'll see a bunch of screenshots of vanilla WoW. Now, these screenshots are not just random things I looked up. These are actual screenshots of my guild raiding in Blackwing Lair. You're gonna see a screenshot in Naxxramas and a few others. Yeah, and these are actual screenshots. This is my level 60 Tarn Druid. I was in Legio Xisio on the Dragon Maw and the Frostbane EU server. I had a character in there. It was a Resto Druid. His name was Mariku. And yeah, I was in there with a bunch of RL friends, and we had great times. And like I said, you're gonna see a bunch of screenshots from my actual character raiding in retail vanilla. So there you go. Guys were tough as hell. Naxxramas was unforgivable. Before I start explaining how hard it was and my personal experiences in Nax, allow me to share some numbers with you. Okay, pause. So these numbers, people have called me out on this and said, you know, these numbers are bullshit. You pulled some numbers out of your ass, whatever. Here's the thing. How should I explain this? Well, basically, when I was making this video, I was trying to find some data regarding how many guilds killed Kel'Thuzad, how many guilds even stepped into Naxxramas and everything. And it was very hard finding actual data, instead of people saying, well, you know, only 10% of the people on my server said that they killed Kel'Thuzad or something like that. You know, that you can't fact check that. So, and I would have loved to have access to like Blizzard's servers or database or something where I could actually look up how many people cleared Naxxramas, what guilds cleared Naxxramas, and later in the video you'll see a top 10 of the bosses being killed. You know, you have like the world first, like in Kel'Thuzad, you see Nihilum on number 1, and shout out to Kungan, by the way. He used this video in one of his videos, so thanks for that. But anyway, I spent hours looking on the internet trying to find some data or posts on the forum that looked, you know, legit enough where I was like, all right, you know, this looks legit. I'm going to use this in my video. And after hours of searching, I found this forum post of some guy, and this was a post way back. This was like 2007. It was a post of an old forum, and this guy had some numbers regarding the US servers. That's why I'm using the US servers as an example, because that's what I found in that post. And he found some numbers about the US servers how many people were playing there, and how many people cleared Naxxramas, as you'll see in the video. And he backed it up with some data, he had some graphs and everything, and I was like, you know what, this looks legit enough to use in my video. Compared to everything else I found, this looked pretty good. So that's how I got the numbers. It was an old forum post by someone, and the thing is, I tried to find it later on, but I couldn't. And I guess it was an old forum, so I guess the domain name got changed or it got removed or something, but I could not find it anymore. So who knows, I might start digging again one of these days and I might find it, but I really hope I do. But that's how I got the information here. Before the Burning Crusade, there were around 895,000 level 60 characters scattered across 179 US servers. There were only 900 guilds that managed to kill only one boss in Naxxramas, and take a guess at how many guilds actually cleared Naxxramas on US servers. Nope, you're wrong. 23. That's right. I gotta pause here because that's still an amazing number. 23 guilds out of 895,000 people on US servers. So that's just still blows my mind to this day. 23 guilds managed to clear the entire raid. That means that an average of around 1,000 players got to... So this average is taken across, you know, you look at a guild, you know, you have your core raiders, and then you have, which are like into the 45 or 50 range. So, you know, it's just an estimate. Kill Kel'Thuzad, which is less than 0.1% of the... By the way, the average of 1,000 players killed Kel'Thuzad, that was also from the forum post that guy made. Entire US player base, 0.1%. That is a number that has never been achieved with any other dungeon in the history of WoW. Hell, no other dungeon even came close to that number. So why were there so few guilds and players that cleared the entirety of Naxxramas? Well, let's start off with what you actually needed to be able to step into Naxxramas. Oh yeah, the gear grind. Here we go. First of all, the absolute minimum requirement in terms of gear was a majority of tier 2 or tier 2.5 gear, and nothing lower than items that were on par with tier 1. Yep. If you didn't have that kind of gear, it was back to farming Blackwing Lair or AQ40. So even before you were geared for Naxx, you had to run Molten Core to get tier 1, and then Blackwing Lair and AQ4 to get your hands on the tier 2 and tier 2.5. And keep in mind... Oh, by the way, you're gonna hear a lot of lip smacks in this video, because back then I looked at this video, it was done, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty good. And then when I look back now, I'm like, why didn't I just edit out the lip smacks? It's really annoying. Some people even said in the comment section, like, why didn't you just edit the... Or like, they said, like, the lip smacks are super annoying. Like, how many lip smacks do you use? A lot, okay? And I usually, like, when I look back at audio that I recorded and I hear it, I always edit them out because it's really annoying. But yeah, little extra detail there, little bit of extra comment there. Sorry. All these raids I just mentioned were 40-man raids, and every boss dropped an average of 3 epics. 4 or 5 if you were lucky. 5 is bullshit, by the way. If you look at bosses in Molten Core, they drop 3. And that's it. They drop, or 4 if you're lucky, like I said, but 5 is a little too much. I mean, it's 3 to 4 because you usually have 2 tier pieces and then 1 extra like random drop. Like in Molten Core, you get like your leggings from Magmadar, and then I don't know, like the Obsidian Edge Blade or something like that. Just 1 extra item, and maybe 2 if you like, but 5 now. It was like 3 or 4. So, again, not entirely correct, but definitely 3 on average. Those 3 items on average had to be split over a 40-man raid group. And don't forget that not every... Once again, screenshot from me in my in Blackwing Lair. Look at my gear, by the way. This was also, I think, one of the first raids I joined. And it shows in my gear. I had nothing but piece of shit gear. It was, it was horrible. And I still got to raid Blackwing Lair, so I don't know what my guild was thinking. I don't know why they just said to me, just gear up, you idiot. Oh well. Every raid had the exact same people. So there were a total of around 60 to 70 people in that guild. 60 to 70 is a little bit far-fetched, once again. You have your core raiders, and then you have people that join casually, so it is like around the 50 player mark. It's not 60, 70. That's a little too much. So, yeah. Needed to be geared up in order to enter Naxxramas. Okay, so after months and months of farming Blackwing Lair, Onyxia, AQ40 and such, you finally had 40 people that were geared for Nax. Does that mean you're ready for this instance? Nope, of course not. Because not only did you need some of the best items in game to start raiding, you also needed a ton of consumables. Yeah, the consumables is really true. I mean, to be fair, you know, early Blackwing Lair, early Molten Core, it was pretty goddamn hard that you also needed consumables, but people, I don't know, in my guild, people didn't really use that many consumables, probably because we're noobs. Maybe that's one of the reasons why we never got too far. But, yeah, for Naxxramas, you had no chance without consumables. Like, literally every single raid I was in during Naxxramas, everyone was, like, buffed up the ass with raid consumes. Every raid I saw going in there when I was playing had consumables, and every single raid I joined, well, this is not really a good comparison, but on Primal, you know, we're always decked out to consumables, just because without, you know, it's not going to cut it. That's right, the encounters in Nax 40 were actually so hard that the best possible gear you could get before Nax 40 was not good enough for Nax 40. And this also, like I said, this also counts for like Nefarian and some other bosses that were just ridiculously hard. If Blizzard did that now in Mist of Pandaria, there would be an outrage on the forums of people screaming in terror to buff the items. But in WoW Vanilla, that was it. You had the tier. Had a lot of fun. Had a lot of fun, by the way, just doing this with Microsoft Paint. And I totally did not rip this off of WoW Krender. Nah. Tier 2 and Tier 2.5, and that was it. There was no thing better before Nax 40. Most guilds Lipsmack again. Guilds attempted Nax 40 on weekends, so during the weekdays you were forced to farm consumables such as potions, food, flasks, and other stuff. And this is where one of the things that really, wore on me as a healer. If you were a healer and you had to farm consumables, you were screwed. Not technically not, you were not screwed, because if you teamed up with like a warrior or something else, you could make it happen. But I tried to do that, and many times people were just not interested because they could farm themselves perfectly just fine. They weren't really interested, and I honestly don't know why, because with a healer you can just, if you get like a good warrior or something, you can AoE everything down, or a mage or something. But I found myself a lot of times grinding alone, and what I did was basically I didn't respec, and we'll get to that later, by the way, because I messed up there too. I didn't respec, I just had feral gear, and basically what I did I grinded with feral gear but in resto spec because I didn't want to respec. So that was terrible. I did next to no DPS, I did next to no damage, and killing mobs was horribly slow. So yes, it was a pain in the ass. Much more of a pain in the ass if you were compared to, let's say, a rogue or a mage. Because you did next to no damage to mobs. There was no spell power back then. Oh no, Tier 2 and Tier 1 only gave you bonus healing, which meant your offensive spells did no extra damage whatsoever. So farming was extremely slow and extremely painful. Which is exactly why I resorted to feral gear. You know, I had 5 pieces from Tier 2 and then 3 pieces from like ZG or Tier 1. And none of that gave any spell damage and healing. So it was pretty much useless for farming because you did no extra damage. Not only that, there was no dual talent option where you could simply switch from resto to feral, and even if you could, you probably didn't even have the proper gear for that spec, because once again, the dual spec, I would have loved to have that in vanilla. That would have been great. Just a little addition there. All the items that had agility and strength went to warriors and rogues who needed it for their main spec. Even if you somehow got your hands on some decent feral gear, a respec cost a total of 60 gold. No, it didn't. It cost 50 gold max. I know. Again, why didn't I change this? I knew damn well it wasn't 50, it wasn't 60 gold, it was 50 gold. It went from 1 gold to I think 5, 10, and then it built up to eventually 50 gold. 50 gold was the max amount of money it cost to respec in vanilla. Gold every time. That's right. If you were to farm with your off spec, you basically had to spend 60 gold to switch to that
50.
spec, and another 60 gold
50.
to eventually switch to your rating spec. That's a total of 120 gold,
100.
which was a lot of money back in those days.
And yeah, 100 gold back in those days was really a lot, because that took you a lot of time to farm. Unless you knew what you were doing, unless you were like, once again, if you were rating as DPS, like a mage or something, you just go to Silithus and farm the encrypted Twilight text or something like that. But yeah, 100 gold back then was a lot of money.
A lot of money. Alright, now we got 40 people who are geared and have a crap load of consumables. Are we ready to enter the instance now? Nope.
Lip smack.
The final step to actually getting into the instance was the Attunement quest, which was a bitch on its own.
Okay, so the Attunement quest. People have said that, you know, the Attunement quest isn't really that hard, because if you were level 60 and you were in blues, you know, you did Skullomance, you did Stratholme, you got the rep, so it wasn't really that hard. Yes, but there were also people that really focus on Stratholme and Skullomance. For instance, I focus a lot more on UBRS, because in UBRS you had certain items dropping that I wanted, including the Talisman from Drakisath, and I think a few others. So I actually did not do a whole lot of Stratholme and Skullomance, which meant that by the time, like I did a few UBRS runs, then I got into the guild, so I raided. I did nothing but raid, and when I didn't raid, I either leveled alts or spent time farming consumables. So I didn't go back basically and do Skullomance or Stratholme. So I never went back to those places, which meant that once I got my, you know, my Storm Rage, my tier 2 and a bit of tier 1, I was pretty much fully decked out in epics. I was still honored with Stratholme and with the Argent Dawn, which basically meant that yes, the Attunement quest for me was really annoying and a total bitch. But yeah, I can see why people said, like, you know, the Attunement quest wasn't really that annoying, because if you were level 16, you did the dungeons, you already had the rep. But for me, I didn't do those dungeons. That's why it was such a it's really annoying, in my humble opinion. So there you go, little explanation for that part of the video.
First of all, you had to get honored with the Argent Dawn, which meant you had to either farm quests and mobs, or run dungeons such as Skullomance. Now imagine if you've just done Blackwing Lair, you got a bunch of tier 1, and you got the...
And in this example, I'm just trying to explain that if you, you know, you got to level 60, you do UBRS and like a few others, and you get to like friendly or something, and then you join the raiding guild right away, because, you know, they want people. Then what do? You don't backtrack to those dungeons usually. You just stick with them and do the entry-level raids, such as Molten Core and Zul'Gurub. So if you follow that path, and then you do Zul'Gurub and Molten Core, you gear up, then you get into Black Hole, you gear up, you get into AQ40, then you didn't really touch those dungeons unless you went out of your way to backtrack to those places. And that's what I'm trying to get here. And that's pretty much the point I'm trying to make here.
A bit of tier 2 gear, and all of a sudden you have to jump into level 60 blue 5-man dungeons just to get honored. That was extremely annoying, because obviously you're not getting anything out of those dungeons apart from the reputation. I mean, the items you get there are pretty useless, unless for some kind of decent off-spec items.
Which is totally what happened to me. I went back to those dungeons and I got some half-decent feral items, I guess.
Maybe, but that was really frustrating. And after you get honored, you still had to throw down 5 arcane crystals, 1 righteous orb, and 2 nexus crystals.
The nexus crystals and the righteous orb, I said in the video, these were very expensive, and yes, they were, because the nexus crystals were usually used for like the high level enchants, and the righteous orb was also, I think, was used for the crusader enchant back in those days, and those went for a lot of money in the auction house. So yeah, it wasn't cheap at all. Trust me, it wasn't.
Those regions used to cost an approximate of at least 200 gold. If you were revered, it only cost 90 gold, and if you were exalted, the quest was completely free. But getting exalted was extremely time consuming, so you were better off just coughing up the items to get your pass for Naxx 40. Okay, so now we can finally enter the hardest instance in the entire game. So I guess that now it's time to talk about the difficulty of the actual bosses. Now there might be people here watching this video saying, well, I've cleared Naxx in Wrath Lich King and that was pretty hard. Well, maybe, but it...
Taking a piss at the Wrath Lich King players who did Naxxramas, which to be fair was the first raid. It was an entry level raid, so I get it.
Was nothing compared to Naxx.
Kind of a cheap shot.
Vanilla. Let me give you an example,
Lipsmack.
Such as the Locust Swarm of Anoop Rekan. The effect of Locust Swarm in Wrath cost a dot deep.
Once again, this what you see right here was a forum post, and again, this was all I really had to work with was forum posts, and then people citing the source, so I could actually fact check it and see if they were actually right. And yes, they were actually right. So again, you see that this is a forum post
Buff that did around 1300 to 1700 nature damage every 2 seconds, and it silenced the target. The effect of Locust Swarm in Vanilla caused a dot debuff that did around 1200 damage every 2 seconds, and it silenced the target. That's right.
So
even though an average geared player in Wrath had at least 10
Okay, again, this is bullshit.
times more.
I put an annotation there. I don't know where it went, but basically, the problem here was I was comparing the health of the average raider with the health of the average in Vanilla with the average health of the raider in Wrath Lich King. So I wasn't, and this is the problem. I kind of messed up here because when I was checking out how much health the average raider had in Vanilla compared to the average raider in Wrath Lich King, I then started talking about how much health people had in Naxx compared to how much health people had in Naxx Wrath Lich King version. And 40k obviously isn't true. I mean, if the average raider, you cleared Naxx, you cleared Oldawara and a few others, then you get to item level like what, 230 or something like that on average, then yes, you can actually get 40k. It should not be that hard. I mean, that is for the more tanky classes like warriors and everything. But, reaching 30k with item level 230 should not be too hard. I mean, I've played on Dalaran WoW. I now kind of know what kind of health pool people have with when they're doing Naxx. And yes, it's definitely not 40k. That's bullshit. It's about, I'd say about 20k. Well, I'm a warlock, so I have 20k or something like that when I'm doing Naxx. So I guess everything taken into consideration, probably 25k. So the 40k is pretty useless. That's not true. So yeah, that is wrong.
More health, the damage of the debuff was almost exactly the same.
Which does not take away from the point, because the damage is exactly the same, and even if I have just 20k health, that still means it's still a huge difference compared to Vanilla Naxx. But yeah, the 40k, once again, it's wrong.
As in Vanilla. Back then, a proper geared Clothy had about 3,500 health at best.
Which is totally true, because if you were a proper geared Clothy, if proper geared, if you really went out of your way to get the good gear, which is Bloodfine. Obviously, everyone who is a Clothy, like a Warlock or a Mage, and you're DPS, you go for the Bloodfine. Bloodfine has 0 stamina, so of course your health is going to be just really low. So 3,500 was actually a fair assumption back then.
Which meant 3 ticks of that debuff and you were dead. 6 seconds and you were dead. You were done. Another boss that comes to mind is Noth. Raids in Wrath could actually ignore the curse and didn't even...
Yeah, me and my friends, obviously, like you've seen the videos of me raiding Dalaran WoW. When we did Naxx, we could actually just ignore the curse. Just fuck it, why not? It doesn't do a whole lot of damage, why not? Just ignore it. Screw it. So this is actually true. I tried Noth the Plague Ringer with my guild in Naxx, and the curse was horror. I mean, it was insane. I mean, I was a druid, I had to decurse, Back then I was, I don't know, 15, 16, so I was terrible at the game. I still kind of am, by the way. So yeah, you know, if you weren't on your A game with the decursing, yeah, shit out of luck, basically.
Bother to decurse. However, if there was no decursing going on in Nax Vanilla, it meant an instant wipe for the entire raid.
Yeah, it was brutal.
That's how hard it was. Hell, even the 4 horsemen fight, you needed 8 geared tanks. 8!
This was so awesome. We didn't do the 4 horsemen. Did we actually?
Not 1, not 2,
I
not
need to
1
check.
main tank, 2 off tanks. No, 8 geared tanks. That's absolutely insane compared to today's standards. I remember in my guild we actually had to try and steal geared tanks.
I remember now. Sorry, I was not sure if we did the 4 horsemen. I'm not sure actually. Did we actually do the 4 horsemen? It's been so long, but I do remember us trying to get other guildies from other guilds to try to join our guild because we had to. We had this kind of ideal setup for certain bosses, and we could not fill that ideal setup with members we had back then. So we actually tried to steal members from other guilds and try to basically bribe them with stuff. It's stupid, but and like I said, you have 4 horsemen. You needed 8 tanks to do that boss. You know, you had no choice but to, because what guild back then had 8 gear tanks, meaning you had the this is a little detail, but basically you needed the 3 set piece from tier 3, which gave you more chance to hit with taunt, because if your taunt missed, that was horrible back then for the 4 horsemen fight. So you needed basically 8 tanks with 3 out of 9 dreadnought. So yeah, once again, really tough.
Tanks from other guilds to help us out because A, we didn't have enough attuned tanks, and B, they weren't all properly geared.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
That's how far we had to go to even stand a chance against an encounter that wasn't even one of the last bosses in Nax 40. That's right, it was that freaking brutal. Nax 40 had almost the exact same damage values as Nax in Wrath Lich King, which makes Nax in Wrath look hilariously easy.
And to be fair, Nax was an entry-level raid, so I'll give it that.
Just for a comparison, Nax in Wrath was fully cleared in less than a week after its launch. Let's take a look at Nax in Vanilla. The patch for Naxxramas came out on the 19th of June 2006.
Once again, this was something I could actually look up on, I think it was WoW Wiki or something like that, but like an actual legit website. So this, I was really glad when I found this information. I was like, yes, finally, something that looked very official and that looked factual, basically. I could fact check this, so I was very happy to find this information.
And it wasn't until the 7th of September before Kel'Thuzad was finally killed.
There we go, Nihilum from Mactar in the EU. Great. And actually, yeah, Memento Mori. You could see it in the bottom there, or in the top of the. Memento Mori was one of the Alliance guilds. Actually, in the bottom too, from Kel'Thuzad number 10. They were on our guild. They were on our server. I remember people from Memento Mori, because they were like, you could see it. It's on Frostmane EU, where Legio Sisio was as well. So that's kind of cool, I guess.
That's right. It took the entire player base almost 3 months before one guild actually managed to clear the entire instance. That is something that is just extreme if you compare that to other instances.
I'm not sure if actually, maybe you guys know, but I think either Illidan or Kil'jaeden or Muru came close to that figure. I'm not sure how close, but I think it was like a month or 2 before those got killed. But maybe I'm wrong. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong.
I mean, instances in Burning Crusade came kind of close, but this is a number that has been unmatched for years. It was 2006, it's 2014 right now. It's been 8 years, and there hasn't been an instance that came even close to this number. That is absolutely insane.
I use insane and brutal a lot in this video. I know, I didn't really write a good script.
Not only that, in order to actually survive insane damage like this, you needed resistance gear. Something.
This is really funny because I told people in this video that yes, you needed tier 2 and tier 2.5 gear and things that were at least on par with tier 1. You also needed resistance gear. And then people in the comment section was, well, you need tier 2 and tier 5 and resistance gear. So which one is it? It's both, dude. It's both. You had your whatever you had your normal gear, your, let's say you have full tier 2, and then you go out of your way to either get stuff like that, which I'm showing on the screen right now, from the bosses that you kill, or you craft it yourself. And that crafted gear was not cheap. Not cheap at all. So, you need the frost resistance, you absolutely needed that for Saffron, which I'll say in this video. So, once again, it's just, you had a combination of that, of tier 2, or whatever gear you were wearing, your main gear, with added pieces, like you did in AQ40 actually. You did it with Huron, and I think Twin M's with Warlocks, with Shadow Resistance, which we are doing right now in Primal. So, yeah, it was necessary. And this is something that has completely been removed. I'm not sure if people are, like, if it's still necessary in retail, but resistance gear, I think they pretty much got rid of that. Which is kind of sad, because I kind of liked going out of your way to get some extra, like, different gear for certain bosses, but there you go.
I think it has become obsolete in today's WoW. I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised if people don't even know what resistance gear is for anymore. I wouldn't be surprised. But you actually need to get your hands on frost resistance, nature resistance, shadow resistance, and fire resistance gear in order to properly withstand all the damage in this instance. And resistance,
once again, is not entirely true. I mean, the main resistance gear you needed was just frost for Saffron, but all the others, for the trash maybe. But yeah,
gear, especially for frost, was extremely scarce. There were a few frost items that dropped from bosses in Naxx40, but once again, every single guide in that 40-man group needed to have that gear.
Once again, there's like a lot of things where I go, needed that gear, and I was like, why didn't I just edit that out? Once again, poor editing on my part, I guess.
So it could take another month before you actually had some frost resistance gear, which you absolutely needed for the fight against Saffron. And it wasn't like you could just go to the auction house and buy a green level 55 of the frost resistance gear. No, that was not enough. You actually needed purpose-built frost resistance gear. Frost resistance gear with spell damage. Frost resistance gear with increased defense and a lot of stamina. And that took a long, long time. If your raid didn't have any frost resistance gear, you could not do Saffron.
Well, you could try, but it's insanely hard without frost resistance gear. So yeah, you were pretty much stuck there.
If you couldn't do Saffron, you couldn't move on to Kel'Thuzad. So basically, if your guild didn't have any frost resistance, you were stuck at Saffron. That's it. That's the farthest you will come.
Terrible.
If your raid didn't have any shadow or nature resistance gear, it was an absolute bitch to get through the beginning parts of the Plague, Spider, and Abomination Wing, let alone Loathep. You needed resistance gear. Alright, let's recap a bit before we move on. So let's just check out what aspects we have that make Naxx40 really hard. So
again, terrible English, and just why didn't I edit it out? It's
so far. So far we have the gear in terms of farming tier 1, then tier 2, and tier 2.5. And now we have dealing with scarce loot while rolling against 39 other people in your raid. We have consumables, which cost a crap load of money or took ages to farm if you didn't have a DPS character.
Yeah, the flasks back then, you had your flask Supreme Power. They were pretty goddamn expensive. I remember when I told it a few times, I actually went balanced later in the game. And I actually raided a few times with balance. I wanted to get the flasks, Flask Supreme Power, to raid there, but they were very expensive in retail vanilla, so
character.
Was not cheap.
We have that freaking Attunement quest, which also costed a crap load of money. The insane damage values, and finally the mandatory resistance gear. So now let's move on to trash. As I just stated above, you needed resistance gear to clear out trash in several wings, but not only that, some trash actually respawned after 30 minutes. That's right, you had 30 minutes to try and kill a boss until you were stuck at the start, having to kill all that trash over and over and over, which can really wear on you if you keep wiping on one boss and not making any progression whatsoever, which brings me to something else I want to bring up. The drama. Next 40 was brutal and it wore
Not
out
my guild, by the
guilds
way.
one by
This
one.
this screen is not from my guild.
It was basically farming consumables during the weekdays, which cost a lot of time, and then wiping over and over again during the weekends, only to get stuck on trash after 30 minutes and having to start all over again. It was only a matter of time before people in guilds started getting frustrated and started pointing fingers,
Once again, not my guild.
blaming other.
We didn't kill Patchwork. Funny story about Patchwork. I think I might have told this before, but we got to Patchwork. We were like, let's just do this. Let's do this. And Patchwork back then was considered the gear check, basically meaning it was not just based on skill alone. You needed X amount of gear to do Patchwork. That's why it was called the gear check. Because it was a bit of it was a DPS race, but also you needed to be able to keep the tank alive. So it was not just the tank needed gear, healers needed gear, DPS, everyone needed gear. You could just not just rely on skill. You needed the gear, basically. And I remember us doing Patchwork, Lego Xisio, Frostbane EU, and we had our main tank. I think his name was Marog, Mawrog. He had almost either full tier 2 or almost full tier 2, and we were fully buffed, like consumables, everything. We were ready to go. He charged in and he got one shot, or at least he got two shot or something. I remember this very clearly. He charged in, got damage. I was like, oh shit, he's taking a lot of damage. I need to just cast nature swiftness, and then healing touch or whatever. I didn't even get time to do that. I didn't land that spell even. He was killed that fast. Tier 2 warrior with full consumables. He got wrecked. Really, really hard. Patchwork was brutal.
Other people, etc. Many vanilla players have said that Nax 40 was the guild breaker, and I quote, "If you wanted to tear your guild apart, you should do Nax 40." I guess now is a good time to tell you about my personal experience in Nax 40.
Here we go.
I was in one of the top rating guilds on the Frostbane server called Legio Excisio.
There you can see my druid there with the 5-8 Storm Rage, 3-8 Cenarian, Hide of the Wild, and I think that's the Wheel of Arlok from Zuguru. That was my rating gear, basically.
We were one of the first guilds to kill Nefarian, and in AQ40 we got to Cthulhu before Nax 40 came out. We had a great time in Molten Core.
I think I actually messed up in this video because we didn't get to Cthulhu. We got to Twin M's, and then we didn't get past Twin M's. I'm pretty sure we didn't kill Twin M's. We didn't get further than Twin M's, so that is again a mistake.
Like in Lair, Onyxia. But when we started doing Nax 40, we watched our own guild crumple apart. We got sick and tired of spending hours and hours farming consumables only to waste them on countless wipes, which meant fights in Vedrillo started happening.
Again, just lazy fucking, why didn't I just edit that out?
People not wanting to do Naxxramas anymore, which led into us not getting any further. And that eventually led into our guild eventually breaking up. We managed to kill Instructor Vesuvius, Anubrakan, and Patchwork, but after that we...
Again, why didn't I say that? We didn't kill Patchwork. I think we killed Anubrakan, Instructor Vesuvius, and one more. And I think one or two more, actually. But we didn't kill Patchwork. I'm pretty sure I messed that up too in the video.
We pretty much reached a dead end. We were tired of wiping, viping, pointing fingers. We just gave up. We left the guild and we went our own way, and that was pretty much the end of our guild. Despite all the great times we had in Blackwind Lair and Molten Core and the fun.
All the great times in Blackwind Lair. It was not all great. Blackwind Lair for us was tough as hell too. And I mean, back then I was 14, 15 back then. And many people that I was raiding with were that age. So you get a bunch of 15-year-olds together. 15-year-olds are not the best in terms of communication, in terms of respect and everything, and discipline. So, yeah, it was a bit of a mess. Nax 40 just destroyed our guild. I know it sounds dramatic, but
it really happened that way. And trust me, it happened for so many guilds. And so many people will tell the exact same story I'm telling now. It destroyed guilds because it wore on you so bad. It was, as I've said before, brutal.
Brutal.
Not only that, imagine the lag and the horrible frame rate players had to deal with.
I'd like to comment on this, by the way. There was a guy, is he in the comment section? Can I find it? Let's see. I'm not sure if I can still find it. There was this one guy who pointed out that his main tank in their guild was basically looking down to the ground. You know, you tilt your screen all the way that you're looking dead onto the ground, like vertically, just to increase your FPS. And I remember doing that too, because when I was raiding, I did not have 60 FPS. I didn't even have 30. I had like 25 or something. I had a shit computer back then. And I discovered that, hey, if you look dead on to the ground, because, you know, there's less textures to pop up, then you get more FPS. So that's what I did too. I had this grid of all the players. I did not have to, well, I had to look a little bit, you know, make sure I don't stand in the fire and everything. But in terms of the actual players, I didn't have to see them. So what I did is just tilted my screen, tilted the view, the camera, and then just looked at the grid of the people and then just healed. That's how I did it too. I remember this. I remember doing it like that too. So that was really fun. That's what we had to do in vanilla just to get 60 frames per second. Like, do you understand how in today's WoW, the frame rate drops are barely an issue? They're barely ever an issue because everyone has a PC that can run WoW. WoW is a very light game now. You can run it on a fucking laptop. Like an average laptop, basically. But back then, you actually needed a pretty beefy gaming PC to run WoW perfectly. So, once again, one of the difficulties that you don't have these days anymore. Because, you know, back then WoW was a pretty demanding game.
Imagine
Believe
trying
it or
to
not.
do a raid with 39 other people throwing around spells and killing tons of mobs. I mean, my computer back then was considered to be a pretty decent gaming computer.
It wasn't pretty decent. It was half decent at best. So again, I don't know why I said that, but it was half decent at best.
And even that thing struggled to get more than 25 frames per second. Compare that with WoW today.
This is not me, by the way. Some people said, was that you in the picture? No, of course not. Look at that guy and look at me.
Where even the most basic gaming PC will have...
To be fair, I did have one of those big ass heavy CRT monitors. That's what I had. Crazy.
no trouble running WoW at 60 frames per second on medium settings. It was... That just made it extra difficult, not being able to respond just like that. You basically were just always half a second behind because your frame rate was terrible, and then there was the lag. Hell, some people actually disconnected from the server during fights, such as Thaddeus.
I had my game crashing many times too, because I would just... the frame rate would drop. I started spazzing out. I started doing a bunch of shit on my keyboard. My computer just got stuck. It crashed. So that happened too.
I mean, that is just insane. It would be unacceptable in today's WoW. And it happened in vanilla, in Naxx 40. I've heard people say that Naxx 40 can be hard because the mechanics are...
I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the video, maybe later on, but there were actually people that were disconnected during the Thaddeus fight because of some weird thing that was not correct in the code or something. So there was that too.
Are a lot easier than today's mechanics from bosses. And yes, you are absolutely right. I mean, the mechanics for Garrosh on Heroic are a lot more complicated and a lot more advanced compared to bosses in WoW Vanilla. But keep in mind that back then we also didn't have nowhere near enough flexibility in terms of spells and...
Pause. What I mean with this is basically in World of Warcraft today, or even like starting from Cataclysm, you had a lot more spells that made you a lot more... that gave you a lot more mobility. You know, think of Wild Charge from Druids, think of Deterrence from Hunters, that basically, I mean, Cataclysm, it basically, you leap backwards, which is a great way, if you know, if you're standing with your Hunter, you're shooting your, whatever, you're shooting your crossbow, fire gets onto you, you can basically use deterrence to leap back and get out of there very quick. You could not do this in vanilla. All you had was run. So that's what I mean with this point that I'm making. You know, there's stuff like that.
Longevity. Almost every single spell was mana expensive. I mean, you had healers going out of mana, tanks lacking rage, and almost no AoE aggro abilities, and hunters also going out of mana.
Pause. Another funny thing, some hunters in my guild, what I actually did was, when we started, traded mage for water, they got a stack. Then the fight started, they started shooting, aimed shot, whatever. Got out of mana, feigned death, and then drank mana, and then when they got full mana, they rejoined the fight. I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure it's not the best way to do DPS, but that's what they thought back then was the best way to do DPS. Feign death, drink mana, and then join the fight. I mean, it sounds so stupid in today's WoW, but that's what we had to do.
Yeah, you heard me right. Hunters had mana back in those days and needed to carry around mana potions if they were to last during a long fight.
Mana potions.
Getting out of mana was no exception. It happened every time, and especially in Naxxramas, you needed to have consumables just to be able to survive, just to have enough mana, just to continue on healing or throwing frostbolts or whatever. You needed it.
Lipsmack,
Well,
again.
I guess that's everything I can tell you about Nax 40 for now. I hope you realize how brutal this instance was back then, and I'm pretty sure there are a few more arguments
And I hope you realize how many flaws there are in this video.
to explain how to convince people how hard Nax 40 was back in WoW Vanilla.
It's a stupid sentence, like I'm arming you guys to be able to fight off the people that say Nax wasn't hard. Here's your ammunition. Now go ahead and bother people in world chat on your server.
Despite that, I still had some glorious times in Naxxramas, and I can't deny I feel somewhat proud to be part of that, that handful of guilds who actually managed to kill some bosses in that godforsaken place.
Godforsaken place. Like again, I'm using a bit of an overreaction here.
Yeah, that was just, lots of memories there, but
It's almost like I have PTSD from old Naxxramas. Like, give me a break, dude.
not all of them were really great. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I want to know your experience in Nax 40, so if you want to share that, then leave a comment.
Blah, 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 blah. So there you go. That is the end of my Naxxramas video. So as you can see, this is why I wanted to make the video, because I made this video. Back then I thought it was great. Now that I look back, I realize, it has a lot of flaws. There's things I said that were wrong. Certain things I tried to explain that I didn't really explain that well. So it's not really that great. And I'm still glad, because if you look at the like-to-dislike ratio, that's pretty darn good. So I'm great that people, I'm very glad that people kind of looked at this video and liked it that much. Because if I look back right now, if I look at the content I'm making right now and how much more care I'm putting in my videos, like the simple example, editing out the goddamn lip smacks. I mean, stuff like that. And if I look back at this, it's like, it's a bit of a mess. And still people like it. I mean, 1.02 million views. It's crazy. So there you go. That's my little commentary video regarding the Naxxramas video. So people comment in the comment section. They point out the flaws. They said it wasn't perfect. And yes, I absolutely agree with you. There's flaws in there. It isn't perfect. But still, it's my most popular video, so I can't help it. I can't help it that people like this over, let's say, the what I didn't like about Vanilla video, or the Phoenix War Song leveling experience and raiding experience, which I put way more time and effort in. But it is what it is. So there you go. That was my little I guess revisit to this video. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next video. I'm Hamsterwheel, and have a good one.